Comic book movies have come a long way, and when people think about great comic book movies, we think about the Dark Knight trilogy, we think about Captain America trilogy, we also now more recently are thinking about the Wonder Woman movie. But what if I told you guys there was a superhero movie that kind of flew under the radar? Not in the sense that not a lot of people heard about it, but a lot of people don't understand how great of a movie this movie is, and that's Man of Steel. In my opinion, Man of Steel is a masterpiece of the genre, not just from a comic book fan's point of view, but a filmmaking point of view and a storytelling point of view, because Man of Steel does something that's very hard to do in a movie, and it's not just a movie but any sort of medium, and that is to humanize Superman. Now when we think of Superman, we think of this infallible godlike being, but a lot of that isn't who the character of Superman is. Superman himself, if you know the Superman source material and you know who he is, he's a flawed individual, and this movie does a great job of representing that. And it comes from the creative minds of the Dark Knight trilogy. We have the same writers and the same producers on that project. So why is it that some people love the Dark Knight trilogy but then hate Man of Steel? It doesn't make any sense to me as a fan. And if you look at the critics and their scoring of Man of Steel compared to a movie that not a lot of people actually enjoyed, which is Superman Returns, you'll see that Superman Returns is rated higher than Man of Steel. But it doesn't make sense, because like I said, Man of Steel is a masterpiece of a movie, and that's because Man of Steel does everything a comic book movie should do. It keeps the source material intact. Actually, Man of Steel takes a lot from the actual source materials of comic books, while also taking a character that's very hard to tackle, Superman, and putting him in a modern world. Because remember, Superman was created in the 1940s. To modernize Superman and have him fit in our universe, some things had to be changed with the character. But while those things were changed, the fundamental things that make Superman Superman is present in this movie. We can start with the very beginning of the movie. We find ourselves on Krypton, and something that a lot of people don't know what it is. A lot of people know of Krypton, Superman's homeworld, but in Zack Snyder's Man of Steel, we actually get to see the planet, we see the politics, we see how Krypton was and how they had Krypton set up in this movie, especially with how they had the predetermined births and the birthing matrix, and the very existence of Superman being the first natural born Kryptonian in centuries puts him at a stark difference between most Kryptonians. So while we on Earth and us fans see Superman as an alien, the people of Krypton also see Superman as an alien. That's no more evident in General Zod's eyes. Like in this scene here, when General Zod sees Superman for the very first time, seeing what Jor-El tells him about Superman being the first natural born Kryptonian, look at the disgust in Zod's eyes. You can see that Superman is not only an alien to us, but an alien to his homeworld. So he's sort of a child in between two worlds, not really fitting to any of them. He doesn't know his Kryptonian heritage, so he can't fit there. And he's too powerful to be considered a human, but Superman actually is more human than any of us. What do we want out of life? Everything we as humans want, Superman wants. And in the beginning scenes of this movie, you get a setup to justify not only how Superman feels later on in the movie, but how Zod feels. Zod, who's a being created for the sole protection of Krypton, has his whole existence questioned by the birth of this alien being, which Superman, like I said, to the Kryptonians, Superman is an alien. Natural birth has not been done on Krypton for centuries. And based on how Superman was raised, Superman is more human than Kryptonian. He has human customs, human values, human tendencies. That's what the movie does best the most, is humanize the character. Not only is the movie humanizing Superman, but unlike most origin stories, Superman starts off right as he is. What I mean by that is Superman starts off as a grown man. We skip his entire childhood, and I feel like as a film, that's one of the best methods to understanding Superman. We don't have to see him growing up in Kansas. We don't have to see him growing up in Smallville. All we need to know is the key moments of his life. And one of the best scenes in this movie, which granted I wish would have been expanded upon more, was the scene where Superman's powers start developing in his classroom, his X-ray vision, his heat vision, his super hearing, and he starts to realize that he's not normal. The entire world is this huge thing and he's not like anybody else. And as a child, imagine finding out that you're different. You're seeing these things that are not normal. You're seeing people's skin and bones, and he runs to the closet and he's petrified of the world. And when Martha comes in and she soothes him, that shows us a flawed boy. Now granted, Superman, even as a boy, is a god amongst us. He can defeat or kill almost anyone on this planet. But in his core, he's just a boy. He's just a scared child, and it takes his mother to reel him in, to remind him to calm down, breathe. This happens. Granted, it doesn't happen on the scale of Superman, but every kid has that transition in their life when they feel different, when they feel at odds with society, and they feel like no one understands who they are. And it's so poignant that Martha is the one to do this to him, because a lot of people hear the name Martha and they get triggered because of the Batman vs Superman scene where they stop fighting because of the name Martha. But you have to understand, and I love that this movie laid the groundwork to make Martha such an important character in Superman's life, because Martha is his rock, his pillar. Martha is everything that is dear to Superman, and also Martha is everything that is dear to Batman. So when they come together and they share that name, granted, it might be like a cop-out to the fight, but it's something that motivates and molded these characters to become the men they are. Martha made Clark who he is, made him Superman, and the death of Martha made Bruce Wayne who he is, made Bruce Wayne Batman. So the fact that this seed was sprinkled on since Man of Steel, before they even were developing Batman vs Superman, and for it to have a huge payoff in the movie BVS, that tells you so much about how this movie lays the groundwork for the future of the DCEU. But while we're talking about Martha, we can't forget Jonathan Kent, because a lot of the nuance and beauty of this movie is dealing with Jonathan Kent. Because granted, we see Jonathan as some sort of stern, cold-hearted father to Clark, and just his demeanor, the way he's willing to let a bunch of kids die as opposed to letting Clark's secret out, or the fact that he killed himself rather than Clark save him. A lot of people found that stupid, and I'm not gonna lie, on first viewing of the movie, I thought, that's pretty dumb. Why would he do that? But upon rewatching Man of Steel over and over again, I got to understand where Jonathan's coming from. Jonathan gave the ultimate sacrifice. Could you imagine you have a child who is extraordinary, what the world will do? This child, the very existence of Clark, challenges everything that we know as human beings, challenges religion, the way we think, politics. The course of human history will be forever changed, and Clark would be stripped of his childhood. He'd be stripped of his existence, and he'd be nothing but either an experiment by the government or something that we fear and something that we don't understand. We ostracize him as a person. And Jonathan, not wanting that for his son, would rather die than have Clark lose his humanity, lose his life. And the weight of that decision, granted, seems kind of stupid at first, but if you think about it in the way I just explained, and think of it as giving the ultimate sacrifice to your child to make sure that they have a great life, Jonathan's sacrifice is one of the most noble sacrifices in comic book movies if you think about it. He sacrificed his life for his son. Ask almost any parent you can think of, and that is the ultimate goal. You would give anything to make sure your child lives a normal and happy life, even to the point of giving your life. The more we look at his relationship growing up, his relationship with his parents, his disconnect to Krypton and his disconnect to Earth, we get to see that Man of Steel actually captures who the essence of Superman's character is. Despite all that, he's just a man who wants to do better by life and wants to live a good life. And the movie almost presents it in stark contrast to General Zod, while also making Zod somewhat similar to Clark in this movie. Zod at first comes off as a maniacal, evil alien, but if you think about the character of Zod and who he is, Zod was created with one purpose, and that purpose was to serve and protect Krypton, no matter what the cost was. Zod had no choice in this. As the movie sets up, no Kryptonian has a choice in their future. Everything is predestined. So Zod's entire existence is the defending of Krypton at no matter the cost. And Michael Shannon, the actor who portrays Zod, if you look at his face, the expressions he has, Zod isn't enjoying the things he's doing. Zod doesn't have control over the things he's doing. He has to do what he does. He has to destroy Earth to reborn Krypton. He has to kill Clark. And he has to kill Clark because Clark challenges the very notion of what it means to be Kryptonian. Clark's birth in itself is an affront to Zod's existence. Because like I said, Zod was created with this sole purpose. Every Kryptonian with that purpose. Jor-El had Clark birthed naturally. Jor-El even said in the beginning scenes that Clark is different from every other Kryptonian and that Clark has a choice. And Zod's face when he hears that Clark has a choice, the hatred and anger, because deep down Zod never had a choice, and it just riles him up that it's not fair. For all we know, Zod could have been a painter, he could have been an artist, he could have been a musician, but he had no choice in that. And now you're telling him that there's Kryptonians who get a choice, so everything he's done, every person he's killed, all things he's done has been for nothing. That's challenging a man's entire existence. Zod's whole being is erased, wiped out with the creation of Clark Kent. So anyone in that position would react the same way. You're not going to invalidate my existence by your mere presence. That is intolerable. And that not only invalidates my existence, but invalidates thousands of years of Kryptonian legacy. That's absurd. And in the final battle between Clark and Zod, when there's nothing left and Zod is in shambles because there is no way to bring Krypton, Krypton is gone forever, his whole existence shattered, Zod is a trained military commander. He even says he even masters and harnesses power mid-battle against Clark, showing his superiority to Clark in this whole fight. But towards the end, Clark gets the upper hand and Clark kills Zod. Now, this killing of Zod is something that had the internet going crazy, had everyone going crazy when the movie was first released, because Superman has a mantra that he doesn't kill. And me, as a long-standing fan of Superman, I've always heard that same mantra that Superman doesn't kill, but when he killed Zod in that movie, I understood it and it resonated because it made sense with the narrative that was brought to us by Man of Steel. This is a different retelling of the character, but it doesn't make him any less Superman. With any decision in life, with any moral code you take in life, something has to be the basis of that. And if Superman's never killed, he doesn't know the weight of killing, why would he be so staunchly against killing? So him killing Zod served three purposes in the movie. And the first purpose is that this is a different Superman, this is a different take. This is a more green-eared Superman. He's not the man we know of yet. He's developing. And we also have to remember that Man of Steel was originally a first movie of a trilogy in which we are introduced to this flawed Superman in the first movie, and as the movies progress, Superman becomes the Superman we all know. By the time the third movie of the trilogy come out, Superman should have been the Superman that we all know and love. He should have evolved into that character. The second one, Superman had no choice. Superman had a choice to make, and that was kill Zod or let him kill civilians. Even if he's found some way to stop the civilians, there's no way to stop General Zod. At this point in the movie, there's no such thing as kryptonite, there's no such thing as red solar radiation. Even if Superman knocked out Zod, how would they keep Zod under wraps? And the third thing behind him killing Zod is, if we look at it from Zod's point of view, Zod wanted to die. And I know that might not be a popular opinion, but think about it. Your entire existence is no more. Zod doesn't enjoy killing people. Zod doesn't enjoy the acts he does. He only does it for the greater good of Krypton. But at this point, there's no Krypton, there's no hope of bringing Krypton back. So Zod has no reason to exist. So when Superman had Zod in the chokehold, Zod gave Superman a choice. Either kill me or I kill people. And he knows Superman will not let him kill people. So he kind of gave his life for Superman. Because like I said earlier, Zod is a trained military man and Clark is just a regular farmer. And Zod made it known throughout their fight that he was Clark's superior. So he got stuck in that position. He could have did different moves. He could have moved. He could have flown. He could have did so many different things. But he put Clark in a bind because Zod can't bring himself to kill himself. So he needed Clark to relieve him of this pain that he's suffering. Relieve him of his non-existence, if you will. Because without Krypton, there is no Zod. So Zod cannot exist without Krypton, and he can't just kill himself. So he gave Clark the ultimate choice in doing what he needs to do. Finish the job. You're finishing off the old Krypton. I'm the last relic of Krypton. You must end me. And Clark ends him. Now, looking at Man of Steel in this light, you can start to understand the deeper meaning behind the characters. You start to understand the deeper meaning behind the storytelling. And that's just one aspect of a movie, the storytelling, especially in this day and age with technology. The other aspect is the visuals. Man of Steel is a gorgeous movie, from the Krypton to the battle sequences. And the battle sequences is some of the best battles we've seen in all of comic book movies. Because one of the biggest issues we had with Superman is he never had anything to punch. In this movie, we gave Superman something to punch. They gave Superman other Kryptonians to fight, and boy were those fights beautiful. His fight with every Kryptonian was majestic in a sense that this is what it feels like to have an alien invasion. We've seen other comic book movies where aliens invade. Look at the first Avengers. Look how contained that damage was. If these are gods and hulking creatures and aliens attacking at full force, it's not going to be a contained fight. Like, you can't contain an invasion, especially when you have people like Thor and the Hulk flying around. And we see Superman in his full powers do what he does, and Smallville and Metropolis was destroyed. Heck, even part of the Indian Ocean was kind of destroyed with the World Engine. The stakes were so high in this movie, and Zack Snyder did what he does best. No matter what you have against Zack Snyder, you can't deny the man is a visual mastermind. From Watchmen to Man of Steel to 300, Zack makes some gorgeous shots, gorgeous visual effects, and gorgeous cinematography, which all encompasses itself in this movie. Man of Steel has the story, Man of Steel has the visuals, Man of Steel understands the character and the source material that the character comes from, packaged in the movie. Granted, it's not the movie that fans wanted, but it's a movie as close to the comic books as you can get from any other major comic book movie. And I'm talking about every superpowered comic book movie doesn't touch up to what Man of Steel does. The Dark Knight does his own thing. Iron Man and Avengers take bits of stories and incorporate it into their own things. And Man of Steel actually takes bunch of source materials from Superman's origins while taking the stakes of a comic book fight into the movies. When Superman fights in the comic books, Metropolis is usually totaled. Anywhere Superman fights is totaled. Every time you see Superman, he's always holding back. And when he's not holding back, when his powers are just developed, the aftermath of it is what happens. And that leads us more into Batman vs Superman. I'm gonna leave that for another video. But to me, as a comic book fan who's been reading comic books and watching comic book movies, cartoons, animations since I was a child, since I was 5 years old, I've been watching this medium and I've been in love with it. Man of Steel comes the closest to an actual comic book on screen, and that's why Man of Steel is a masterpiece.